Hello my lovely bookish friends, and welcome back to another video. It is the end of September. Autumn is officially here. I am wearing my pumpkin sweatshirt and it has certainly got an awful lot colder and wetter here in the UK. So I thought today I'd go through my September wrap-up, look over what all the books that I've read this month. I actually didn't do too badly. It was a bit slow to begin with, and then I sort of picked up later on and read quite a few at the end. So we'll start with the book that I don't actually own a physical copy of, which is A Sky Painted Gold by Laura Wood. That's not a very good, nice reflective there on my Kindle. There you go. That's the cover anyway. It's very pretty. So this tells the story of Lou, who lives in this quite small, not much happens seaside town, and you know, not a lot was going on, and she's kind of wondering what she's supposed to sort of do with her life and that sort of thing. When into the neighbourhood, these two new arrivals, this brother and sister duo who are like socialites, they're very high up in a kind of different world to her. They enter the village and take over this manor that had been left and abandoned for ages, which Lou used to go and sneak into and eat apples from. And after a chance encounter, they invite her over and she goes to stay, and there's all these wild parties and stuff, and she gets to see a bit of taste into this kind of other life. And to be perfectly honest, this is a book where there isn't that much in terms of plot. It's a middle grade book, but it's quite a fun read. It's set in 1920s time, so it's kind of all for the vibes rather than for, like, in terms of if you want a book that is very plot heavy, this isn't the one. If you want one that's got very nice summery 1920s parties, the kind of social life, and just the proper, it does have a proper 20s feel, even like a speakeasy. There's all that's in there, and it's a very nice easy read. I literally read it overnight. It was super quick. It's not that long either. If you want a nice summery vibes, that is the one to go for, though obviously we're coming into autumn now, so perhaps that's not what you're looking for. Okay, so now let us get to the rest of the books. First up we have Agnes Gray by Anne Bronte, and this follows the story of Agnes Gray, who's a young woman who is determined to seek work as a governess after her family becomes poor. And now this story draws upon Anne Bronte's own experiences as a governess, and it shows the sometimes harsh, insensitive and isolating treatment that these women who went to these rich houses to become governesses often suffered. And it's honestly just such a sweet story. I didn't realise how wholesome it kind of would be. I don't know why I haven't read this before, because actually if this is a really good book for if you're just starting out with classics, because it's short, it's quite simple language, and it's a really nice, simple, easy story, but it's so wholesome. And honestly, the love interest in this is probably one of the nicest ones that all the Bronte sisters have written, because they have some interesting ideas of what makes a good, you know, love interest. Wife locked up in the attic, you know, Heathcliff, you know. Honestly, this guy he's, you know, green flags all around. So yeah, it's a really cute, wholesome story. I actually really enjoyed it, and to be perfectly honest, I don't know why I haven't read it before. Highly recommend checking it out, especially if you are new to the Brontes or new to classics. It's a good one to start you off. The next book I read was A King's Sanctuary by Hilary Wellington. Now this is a really nice and short historical fiction book. It's a creative retelling of documented historical events which took place in and around White Ladies Manor in Shropshire, England, during the time when the future King Charles II escaped after the Battle of Worcester, and this community essentially helps him escape and get out of England when, you know, the Puritans and Oliver Cromwell and all that were out to get him. So it's a really short, really easy read. It's quite a nice, a bit like Agnes Gray, it's quite nice if you're a starter into historical fiction. The author lays out quite early right at the beginning of the book who's real, who's like fiction, so that you know what it is she's retold and what bits she's changed and so on. And honestly, the book is really short. It's literally like 65 pages, so it's really nice and
sure, obviously you don't get much about character backstories and all that sort of stuff, but it's really interesting, especially as it tells the story of an event that, I mean, I've studied the English Civil War, and I had no idea that how King Charles II got out of England and what happened with all that. So it was really interesting to find that out, and it made me want to research. I love that about historical novels, is that, for me anyway, because I'm a bit of a history geek, after reading them I want to look up what's true, what's not, and find out more about them. So yeah, it's a super quick read. And if you've watched one of my other vlogs, I think it was when I did my reading vlog for the Book Thief, you'll know that I was at a book festival with other authors, and I got this book then, and the author's really nice. She had a stall opposite me, and we were talking a lot, so she's lovely. So yeah, go check out the book. Right, this next book kind of blew my mind a little bit, and I went into it not realising just how much I was going to enjoy this. It is Dracula by Dracula Stoker and J.D. Barker. Now this is the official prequel to Dracula, and when I say it's the official prequel, what I mean is that Dracula Stoker is Bram Stoker's like great grandnephew, and this whole book has been sort of like certified by the Bram Stoker family estate. So it is, so as a lot of you might know, when Dracula was published there was actually like 100 pages that were missing, that like the publishers wouldn't publish and stuff like that. And so this novel, this prequel, sort of is inspired by the notebooks and different journals of Bram Stoker left behind, and it sort of takes it back to what, well, I suppose like the very beginning, if you like, to sort of reveal what may have inspired these events that may have inspired Bram Stoker to write Dracula. And honestly, like, the book is creepy. It is like a classic horror. It does feel very much like Dracula as well. Honestly, I went into this not realising, not knowing that much about it. I've had seen some good stuff about it on Booktube. I think it was on, if any of you watch Darling Desi's YouTube channel, I saw this on it there. She recommended it, and I just picked it up because I saw it in the library, gave it a go, and honestly, I really did enjoy it. It was really creepy. There's like this author note at the end which sort of explains where the inspiration for the story comes from, and it's just like, yeah, it kind of blew my mind a bit, because now I don't know what to think about the novel or what to think about Bram Stoker, because it sort of changes up kind of what you think about Dracula, and honestly it blew my mind a little bit. So I highly recommend, if you read this book, you know, make sure you read the author's note at the end as well. I actually have a few footage of when I was reading this book, and I think I have my face when I was reading the ending, because I was, well, reading this author's note, because I was like, yeah, it kind of blew my mind a little bit. If you've read Dracula and have read the author's note at the end, let me know in the comments what you think about it, because I was really confused why the Bram Stoker estate would put that out. Let's move on. Now we have My Haunted House by Aggie Sage, and this book is, if you've watched my newbie tag, you'll know this is one of the books that literally got me into reading. It is one of my favourite childhood books. It is a middle grade book. It's part of a series. It's wonderful. Let me tell you the synopsis now. It follows the story of Araminta Spook, who lives in a huge haunted house with her Uncle Drac and Aunt Tabitha. Her greatest ambition is to meet a ghost, but when Aunt Tabitha is determined to sell the house, Araminta must think of a cunning plan to stop her, especially if she wants her greatest ambition to come true. Now, I haven't read this book for ages, but then after I did my newbie tag, I was like, oh, I want to read it again and see what it's like, and it's still just so much fun, and it's still just as good as it was when I read it when I was younger. I just love Araminta. She's kind of such a mood a lot of the time, and the concept's great. The story is just so quick and cute to read. I love all the illustrations. I just highly recommend checking it out if you want a bit of a ghostly middle grade fun book. It's a lot of fun, honestly. I love it so much. Next up was The Bone Houses by Emily Lloyd Jones. Now this tells the story of Rin and her siblings who are scraping together a meagre existence as gravediggers in this remote village at the edge of a deadly mountain range that was once home to Fae. The problem is that in that village, the dead don't stay dead. Risen corpses known as bone houses are a result of a legendary curse. And when Ellis, a mapmaker, arrives in the village, the bone houses start to attack with a new ferocity. Together, Rin and Ellis embark on a journey across the mountain to break the curse. Now, I love this book. Honestly, it is one of perhaps my favourite book I read this month. It is like a solid 10 out of 10, 5 stars. I just loved all of it. The characters are great. Rin is this cool, badass, axe-swinging heroine who, I mean, she literally just takes down these bone houses with axe. It's a lot of fun to read. And Ellis is this really cool and different type of male lead as well. He's not the stereotypical kind of brooding hero. He's a map maker, and he just feels a little bit nerdy. I just really like him, and I just loved the overall vibe of the story. It felt very much like a very dark fairy tale, and I loved that about it. I just felt that was something that really drew me in, and I just wanted to keep reading, and I think I read it in 2 sittings. It was, honestly, I highly recommend this one, and it is a standalone. If you have read this book, let me know in the comments below, because I want someone who I can just sort of fangirl to, because I really enjoyed it. And last up we have The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. Now this follows a story of 4 friends, these 4 unlikely friends in a retirement village who meet up once a week to investigate unsolved murders, the Thursday Murder Club. And when a killing takes place on their very own doorstep, this little group of crime-solving friends decide that they want to investigate their first live case. Honestly, this book is such fun. It is proper British dry humour, I will say that. And it takes a few chapters just to get into it, because it's quite a character-driven mystery. So there's a lot of characters that you kind of get introduced to first before the sort of murder and the big events happen. But honestly, I really enjoyed it. Like I said, it was proper dry British humour, and it's a lot of fun. And these characters are they're just delightful, and they also are so well written, because I would totally believe them to be, I totally believe that I'm being told this story by these elderly gentlemen and women, and it's just sometimes the narrative goes off on a bit of a ramble because they've just remembered something, and the way they explain events and remember things, like there's this whole bit where one of them's going off about escape to the country and stuff, and it's just fabulous. Yeah, it's a great, really funny murder mystery. Highly recommend checking that one out.
Okay, so the last book on the list is another one which I no longer own a physical copy of. I did have it from the library, so I've got a few shots that I might insert when I was reading it. And it is the Tea-Dragon Society by Kay O'Neill, and it is just such a cute, it's a graphic novel, a kind of comic book series style, and it is adorable. It follows this girl who sort of stumbles across this sort of society of tea dragons who are literally just dragons who have tea and have little picnics and stuff like that, and she starts to learn about the tea dragons and becomes part of the society, and it is honestly adorable, and it is such a cute, sweet little story. There are like 3 issues which I all now have, like 3 volumes which I all now have on my Kindle, and honestly it's so lovely. It's such a sweet, beautifully drawn, like friendship and everything. It's just honestly adorable, and it goes through different seasons, and I'd also just really want a tea dragon. Like, how can you not? Look, they're so adorable down there. Can you see it? They're just so cute. I want a tea dragon. So yes, I've read the first one, and then there's 2 more which I'll go into my October wrap up, because they're on my next read. And yes, that brings us to the end of the books that I read in September. There was some really good books this month actually. Dracula really surprised me. I wasn't sure what I was getting in for, and it ended up being such a great and fun, creepy read. Bone House was really good, and honestly, yeah, there was quite a lot. I've enjoyed all the books that I read in September. There's been none that I've been disappointed with, so you know, that's a big thumbs up there. Going into October, sort of my TBR, obviously there's my official TBR that I probably need to get to this month, but then I'm also currently reading the first book in the Discovery of Witches series, which I'm really excited about. I've only got like 6 chapters in at the moment, but it's really good and I'm super enjoying it. I'm also still currently reading on my audiobook, or currently listening to on my audiobook, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. That audiobook is so good. I put it on when I'm just like cleaning and doing stuff, and the narrator is really good at telling the story. I'm really enjoying it. And then I also want to get to the rest of the Tea Dragon Society. I just want a tea dragon, okay? So I want to get to the rest of them. And then I also had the next book from set in the same world as the Bone House. There's another book that follows different characters but in the same world. I got that out of the library recently, so that will be on my October TBR. And then I kind of just want to maybe reread some proper creepy autumnal reads, and especially now because we're getting right into the spooky season. I want a bit of magic. I want a bit of kind of autumn vibes and aesthetic. I've got one that I do, A Far Wilder Magic. This is one I picked up a while ago. If you've seen my How Do You Live vlog, I think it was that one is when I picked this up, and I've been waiting because I've heard this has got quite sort of autumnal vibes, and it's also magic based, so I thought this might be a quite good October read. And then there are lots of creepy books I also want to get to, but I have another video coming soon which is going to have a nice nice list and some recommendations about some creepy reads to read this October. So yes, I think that wraps it all up nicely. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider subscribing and liking. Let me know what books you read in September, what were your favourite ones, and what books are you looking forward to reading this October. I really want to know. I like to find more books to add to my TBR. Okay, and so until next time, my lovely bookish friends.